Hi, my name is Vanita Chandrasekharan. I work as a yoga instructor as well as a drama therapist, which means I use drama and creative arts in the practice of psychotherapy. In this video, I'll be covering the topic of boundaries with ourselves and boundaries with others. The topic of boundaries has come up quite a lot and has been discussed quite a lot in the past few years, more so than ever before. What is boundaries in the first place? Boundaries is the that we draw that determines what behaviors are okay and what behaviors are not okay of ourselves and of others. And there is usually a consequence if the is crossed. It is also being able to say no to a situation or to others in terms of spending your time, energy, and resources. Before I go on, I want to acknowledge that having healthy boundaries may not be something which is comes easily to many people for various reasons. However, having healthy boundaries is essential for our mental, emotional, and physical health. Both self abuse and experiencing repeated abuse from others is the result of not having healthy boundaries. Having said that, children who have been abused, it does not apply to them, mainly because they are helpless, and often they do not know what to do in such situations. Therefore, as adults, it's our responsibility to report any child abuse that we know of or that we witness to the authorities. Having healthy boundaries with ourselves can be seen as self discipline and self compassion. The word discipline may seem a little bit restricting because it seems to relate to having a certain structure or certain standards we have set for ourselves, but I tend to see self-discipline as equated to freedom, because when you have self-discipline you tend to have a healthier life, and you're able to do gives you the freedom to do whatever you want and have a happy life. How do you set boundaries with yourself and others? Firstly, look at your list of values. In the previous video, I have spoken about values, which I'll link below. Um, Look at that list. Like, okay, what do you value? And so, therefore, how do I set my boundaries according to my values? Right? So, that's the question, right? An example of having boundaries with yourself is, okay, my example is I love coffee. However, if I have more than 2 cups of coffee, then I notice that my body and mind feels agitated, and therefore I tend to limit my coffee intake to 2 cups a day. So usually when you cross a boundary, there is you will feel an uncomfortable emotion that turns up, or your body. In my case, this one is a physical sensation that I feel. But usually, even when someone has crossed a boundary, or when you have crossed your own boundary, you will feel an uncomfortable emotion in your body, and therefore that kind of indicates, like, okay, that didn't feel right. Okay, so I've crossed a boundary, or somebody else has crossed the boundary, and it's not okay with me. Right, so that's an indicator as well. Another example of self boundary that I have myself is I stop putting myself down. I stop telling, if I make a mistake, I never say, or at least I stop saying, I'm so stupid. I'll never say that, because if I say that, then it, I'm putting my whole self down, not just that behavior. Okay, I could say, I did something silly today. That's a behavior, that's an action. that's a different thing than saying I am stupid. Right? So, and also by putting myself down, maybe if somebody else put me down, I may not think it's such a big deal because I'm already putting myself down. Okay, and it's not okay. So that's also like crossing, allowing another person to cross your boundaries because you don't have boundaries with yourself, about how you treat yourself. So that's another uh, thing to think about when you set boundaries. um, Example of boundaries with others would be, my example would be, I choose not to be abused physically, mentally, emotionally. So basically, I will not tolerate any form of abuse from another person. Um, Firstly, I will not tolerate any form of abuse with myself as much as possible. Okay, so therefore, I will not tolerate any form of abuse from another person either. So if someone has crossed that line, if someone has, let's say, someone has verbally abused me, what I would say is, what I would do usually is, and it depends on the situation, right? So if you're close to the person and that relationship is important to you, then you may want to bring it up and say, hey, look, this is not okay. I refuse to accept that kind of behavior. I cannot be in that kind of relationship with someone who is going to treat me that way, you know. So, but if you feel that you can't have that conversation, that's going to be quite challenging to be in relationship with that person, because then that person has the ability to continue being abusive, and you will keep feeling smaller and smaller and insignificant, and eventually even become angry yourself, and and feeling helplessness. So you don't want to feel that way. So therefore, there must be some the ability to address that issue if you want to continue having that relationship with the person. Okay. Otherwise, walk away from the relationship, because also you also need to realize that nobody can change another person without their permission. They need to want to change, right? Even when a person has a problem and they come to see a therapist, they need to want to change, especially adults. With kids it's different, because you can, they tend use different ways to work with children, um, as well. So anyway, so, if a person that is not willing to admit that they have a problem, perhaps with anger, most of the time when someone is abusive, they tend to have anger issues. Um, so, if they're not willing to work on that, then you need to rethink whether you want to be in relationship with that person. If it's a family member, limit your time spent with them, and you know what, you can always love them from a distance, you know. So yeah, that's about an example of having boundaries with another person or others. Okay, so this is an important topic. So if you haven't thought about setting boundaries with another person, um, these are some of the questions that, or boundaries. So these are some of the questions that you may want to ask yourself. How can I be compassionate or kind with myself, physically, mentally, and emotionally? And like, firstly, ask your question: are you being kind to yourself right now? Are you taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally? So if the answer is no, then the next question: what activities do I need to say yes to, and what activities do I say no to? Or what activities do I need to do more of, and what activities do I need to do less of? Okay. So usually you want to do activities that's going to make you feel healthier, make you feel happier, and make you feel more inspired. And the activities that you want to do less of is things that get you stressed out. If you can delegate it, that would be great. Right? If you still have to do it, spend less time. Find a way to do it by spending less time doing it. Um, and the other question you want to ask is, who do I want to spend more time with, and who do I want to spend less time with? Okay. So the hint is, you want to spend more time with those who inspire and uplift you, and less time with those who put you down or complain too much. Um, so, so these are some of the questions that you want. Those are some of the questions that you would want to ask yourself. So, if you're still wondering about how to set boundaries, trust your emotions. Okay, when you have crossed your own boundaries or somebody else has crossed your boundaries, you will feel it in your body. It will be an unpleasant, uncomfortable emotion that arises. And this is before your thoughts come through, okay? Before you have any thoughts in your mind. So pay attention to that emotion. That's an indicator that somebody has crossed their boundaries, whether it's you or somebody else, right? and uh, and so the next time you will know, this is my boundaries. Okay, and usually when somebody has crossed a boundary, you need to address it, to in some way you need to say to the person, hey, this is not okay, I don't feel good about it. Let's Is there any way, I mean, how are you going to work this out, or something? You need to address that. And you need to acknowledge your emotion. Do not ignore your emotions. I think one of the problems that we have now, a lot of people with anger issues and depression and everything else, there's a lot of suppression of emotions. You don't want to suppress the emotions, and yet you don't want to kind of like blow it all out of proportion either. So you want to, the emotions usually is like a physical feeling. So sit with it. It's an uncomfortable space to be, but it's important to let it move through you. So when that boundaries is crossed, then you need to address that. Otherwise, you otherwise walk away from the situation if you can, if you have to, depending on the situation, depending on the example, and the relationship you have with that person as well, as I mentioned earlier. um, but then you will know, this is my boundaries for myself and for others. Okay. Sometimes we only become clear about our boundaries when it has been crossed through life experiences. Okay. But we also can learn from other people's experiences as well. Okay. And what they do about it, and how to deal with it next time. Well, that's all I have for today in this video. Thank you very much for watching my video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. See you next week.